If it hadn't been for my brother and me, I doubt anyone would have even noticed the last forgotten gift tucked deep beneath the Christmas tree.
There's one more!
I shouted, crawling under the branches as the pine needles stabbed at my back. When I wriggled back out, a tiny box clutched in both hands, I felt like some explorer emerging from an uncharted cave, carrying a relic from a lost civilization. I was sliding backwards so fast, grinning like an idiot, that it was a miracle I didn't knock down any of the glass ornaments dangling above me. Naturally, that sparked the usual sibling bickering. Who saw it first? Who deserved to open it? Who would get to keep it? But luck broke my way when Mom picked up the box. She squinted at the tiny tag tied to the string.
Jacob.
My name. That was all I needed. I snatched it out of her hands and tore through the plain brown wrapping paper. Inside was a dull matching box. I lifted the lid like the top of a coffin. Dramatic, I know. Only to find something I definitely hadn't put on my Christmas list. Even if I'd known this thing existed, I don't think I would have wished for it. It was a plushie. A gray one with long noodle-like arms and legs attached to an egg-shaped torso wrapped in a modest dark green jacket. The head looked like some mix between a wolf and a coyote. Animals I'd only heard about from my friend Ben, whose grandparents lived out of state. According to him, coyotes stole their chickens and anything else old folks kept around. A tiny top hat sat crooked on its head, flanked by two stiff, oversized ears. Just under the brim, two small, black button eyes stared outward. Its snout stretched long and pointed, made of two soft pieces, on upper and lower jaw, each lined with little stitched pockets like empty gums. I lifted it out of the box, its limp limbs dangling toward the floor as if the thing had just been waiting to be freed. At that age, I wasn't exactly subtle about my feelings, and my disappointment must have been written all over my face, because Mom caught it instantly.
It's just a family tradition,
she said brightly, but it meant nothing to 6-year-old me. I just stared at her, confused, until she stepped away from the dinner table and sat down with us on the floor. She picked up the plushie, hooked her finger under its lower jaw and moved it like a tiny puppet before pushing the tip of her finger into one of the little sewn pockets inside the mouth. The pocket went surprisingly deep.
It's for your milk teeth,
she added quickly, but it didn't do much to fix the disappointment sinking in my chest. Still, I thanked her out of politeness. Then I started gathering all my toys and hauling them back to my room. One by one, each of them wobbling awkwardly in my small arms before finding their place in their new home. I was generous enough to let the new plush stay with me. I set it on one of the shelves, carefully positioning it between the rows of stuffed animals. Though I made sure to keep it far away from my chicken plushie. Something about it didn't mix. After that, Mom nagged me into getting ready for bed. She tucked me in and read a little more from Pinocchio, the story we were working through together. When she finished, she gave me a quick kiss on the forehead and switched on my bedside lamp, leaving me alone in the warm glow of the nightlight. I drifted off fast, worn out from everything Christmas Eve had thrown at me. But somewhere in the middle of the night, a sound dragged me back. Wet, Sticky. Like someone smacking their lips together over and over. My eyes snapped open. The room was dim, washed in the weak orange glow of the night lamp. At first, everything looked normal. The dresser, my toy box, the crooked poster above my bed. Then my gaze slid to the plush shelf and stopped dead. Something sat there. Wedged between the other toys was a tall, spindly shape that hadn't been there before. Its limbs too long, too thin, hanging off the shelf like strips of meat. Something else hung off the figure. Some kind of clothing. An enormous sagging coat like the kind Granddad wore when he went out to chop wood. Only this one looked rotten. The fabric drooped off its shoulders in damp folds, clinging to the creature as if it had been dredged out of the mud. Its muzzle was long and crooked, bent at angles that suggested it had been broken again and again, and simply left to heal wrong. Black matted patches of fur clung to its skin in filthy clusters, strands glued together with something that caught the light in sickly glints. Even in the weak glow, I could see how dirty it was, how the hair clumped in knots like it had been torn out and shoved back on. On its head sat a crooked hat. It was crushed, warped as if someone had squeezed it in a fist until the structure warped into a permanent lopsided slouch. And from beneath the rim, two perfectly round, perfectly black eyes stared back at me. They were too smooth, too empty, reflecting the orange lamplight in sharp, wet glimmers, like beetle shells, or pupils with no sclera. It drew a breath. A slow, rattling inhale, thick with mucus. A voice gurgled out of its ruined throat, heavy and wet, like it was pushing words through split flesh.
You've got something I want, kid.
It slid off the shelf and hit the floor like a sack of flour. Heavy and sudden, the weight of its body made the wood groan. It landed face first, its long muzzle bending with a sickening wet crunch that made my stomach twist. But instead of crying out, it simply began to move. Slowly, deliberately. It hauled itself forward in dragging pulls, using only those impossibly long arms. Its legs trailed uselessly behind, limp and boneless, slapping against the floor like dead fish. I dove under my covers, curling into myself as tightly as I could. The blanket was thin, too thin, but it was the only shield I had. I felt it before I saw it. The bed frame trembled as its fingers curled over the edge. Its grip tightened, the wood creaking in protest. Then the heat of it washed through the blanket, its breath thick and humid, rolling across me in waves. Drops of saliva seeped through the fabric, warm and heavy, blooming into dark, wet patches above my face. It laughed. A laugh that I could only describe as a wild animal trying to replicate what a human sounds like. It was like a yapping dog that came close to a quiet giggle. It rattled out of its throat like something was lodged deep inside, vibrating through the phlegm and broken cartilage. Then its hand slid under the blanket. The fabric lifted. Cold air rushed in. And that hand, soft like a stuffed toy, forced its way into my mouth. My jaw stretched wider than it was meant to, hinges aching and screaming in pain. My vision blurred from the pressure alone. Its fingers were too big, suffocating, pushing past my tongue until I gagged. Then they found it. The loose tooth I'd been worrying about all week. The one hanging by a thread of gum. It pinched down hard and pulled. Once, twice, my jaw cracking, my body thrashing uselessly. Until my tooth finally tore free with a wet, final smack. And everything inside my skull rang like a struck bell. I looked up through teary eyes and saw its mouth open, stretching into a wet, yawning hole lined with rows of empty, dark red gums before its hand slipped inside of it, deep enough to make its elbow disappear, only to slide back, dripping wet with thick, putrid saliva. I heard a nasty, muffled crack as my tooth slid inside one of its gum pockets. Its wet, dark eyes, like two polished buttons, never left mine, not blinking even once, while its massive head tipped slowly to one side. The crooked little top hat leaned with it, like a gesture of thanks, before its body collapsed on itself, falling to the floor just like a puppet whose strings were cut all at once. Mom had to have heard the sudden ruckus because moments after the tooth was ripped out of my jaw, she came into the room, half awake, not sure what was happening. She held me as I cried into her shoulder, as snot flooded her shirt. I couldn't explain what had just happened. It didn't make sense, even to me. After a while, I got used to him. That's the part people never like when I tell this story. But it's the truth. He became part of the routine, something I grew up around, the way other kids grew up around nightlights or creaky floorboards. I learned not to fight it. Fighting only made it hurt more. He would take what he wanted eventually. He always did. So it was better to let it happen on my terms. Sometimes that meant I helped. When I ran the tip of my tongue along my teeth and felt one wobble, even just a little, I didn't wait anymore. I'd hook it with my fingers and yank it free, one way or another. It hurt, it bled, but the fear was smaller that way. It was at the very least manageable. With my mouth full of blood, I'd stand on my bed and place the tooth into one of his empty gums. He liked that. He'd watch from the shelf, tucked in among the other plushies as if he belonged there, smiling wide. His mouth was never right. Teeth were set crooked and wrong. Molars where incisors should have been. Buck teeth shoved off to the side. But he never complained. He just watched, pleased, head tilted slightly, eyes shining and patient. I named him Mr. Teeth. I think I did it to make him seem nicer, less like something that watched me sleep. The last time I ever saw him, he woke me gently. No grabbing, no pain, just the soft press of his hand on my shoulder. He stood by my bed, smiling from ear to ear, breath hot and rotten, filling the space between us.
Thank you,
he whispered. Then he tipped his hat. Just like that. He turned and walked out of my room, closing the door behind him with a soft creak. That night, I slept better than I ever had in years. So well, in fact, that I never heard my brother screaming from the next room. Mom found him in the morning. There wasn't much left that looked like him anymore. Just something red and ruined, spread across the bed like cranberry sauce after a spill no one bothered to clean up. They said it must have been coyotes. Turns out, coyotes really did live in our state after all.